Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NHBR Solutions webinar for 9.4.0, coming live to you from Brisbane. Just welcome and housekeeping up first, then we're going to run through the new features in release 9.4.0, and then some details about our next webinar. Panel members joining you today is John Barry, our Product Manager, Nathan Smith, our Product Analyst, Stephen Ryan, our Product Analyst, and myself, Senior Digital Engagement Officer. The format today will be slides and new feature demonstrations. The webinar is uploaded online for viewing, and please use the contact details provided at the end if you need to get in touch with us. Now we'll get straight into our new features for 9.4.0. First up, we have the DAM release, and I'll pass over to John.
Cool. Okay, so we will be going live today with the production release of our digital asset management tool. I'm going to provide you a bit of a demo of that. We've been adding functionality through a user acceptance and beta phase for the last month. And this will be our first MVP release. We'll continue to make improvements to this as we get feedback. But today we'll see the first production release, and we'll be loading about 1,000 assets from the Strategic Local Government Assessment Program, which is being funded by the Commonwealth to help governments fund the assessment of key assets, and that information will be available through the tool. I'll share my screen now and show you where to find it and what it looks like. It'll be available to any user against a road manager account that has access permit role. So I'll jump into our test environment to give us a view. In the menu, you'll find from today an assets menu item. If you don't, then contact your administrator. Anyone that does see the access permits menu item should see the assets menu item. When you click into that, it'll load up into a new view, and that view will be the assets view from our new environment, new platform. So you'll notice a slightly different look and feel to the standard tables you see for access and consents. This represents the new platform design that will slowly start to progressively roll out across the entire platform. So in the asset management view, again, it is connected to your permissions. So if you have the access role and you have an access supervisor role, you'll be able to add new assets. If you have a access role, which is a user general, you'll be able to edit existing assets. And if you have a read-only role, then you'll only be able to view the information. So very simple asset register. Within the asset view, we have broken up the assets into a number of different steps, and that's about what you can see and what information we're currently capturing. Now, at the moment, we are limiting this to structures assets, so bridges and culverts, but happy to take feedback from any road manager that's interested in expanding this particular feature. As you can see, there's some quite basic information about the asset itself, some key vehicle heights and widths. The assessment type is one of the keys. So this particular module has been developed to help support the assessments that are being done by engineers funded through the Commonwealth. But it can also be used to load up any other assessments and route assessments that either the road managers funded or even operators that have been requesting access to some restricted structures. The next piece of information is gradually starting to expand. So we've got details about the span. But at this stage, just the lengths, but we'll be looking to increase this over time. And we already have some interested road managers who would like to record more information about span details, which could be used to help with route assessment processes. So you'll start to see this grow over time as well. The spatial representation is a key part of this. So I guess the benefits of this particular tool is that Not only is it just a simple repository for asset information, but this information becomes automatically accessible to anyone through the Route Planner tool. And I'll show you that in a sec. Attachments to the initial assessment document from the engineers would be attached here, and that will be available through the Route Planner. And then there's some comments and an overall review of the asset information. Now, what's available to operators and the general public through the Route Planner tool is a restricted set of information. Any miscellaneous attachments won't be available. The initial assessment will be, and then some very basic details about the asset and its name. So I'll just give you a quick view on that now. So if we jump into the Route Planner tool, again, this from the Information Hub is available to anyone, regardless of whether they've logged into the service or not. So from the Route Planner tool, once it's loaded up,
is that an easy fix?
there's a new layer that we've got that's been available for some time now, which is the assets. So if we turn that on, what you'll find is the current assets that have been loaded into the system. Like I said, we'll have over 1,000 that will be loading up over the next couple of days. Once that data is loaded in, as a road manager, you'll be able to maintain the information that's published on this layer through that asset register. So if I zoom in on an asset here, just let that load up.
What is for Andrew's induction?
And I'll click on this guy. So you'll see the basic information that comes up. So the type of the asset, culvert, the name, the ID, year of construction, material, the assessment type, and then a link to the actual assessment. So that's the PDF assessment that's attached in the asset register. So any of that information that's updated in the asset register will update the layer here. And not only is this useful for operators who can then use this information to help plan their routes and understand whether there may be some restricted assets that they should plan around, but it'll also be available for road manager consenting officers. At the point of consent, you'll be able to turn this layer on, and that information about the assets in your area will to them as well. So we're hoping to see improvements to access consent timeframes by virtue of providing decision-making support information at the point of making that consent decision. Okay, so that's the digital asset management functionality. It's been a few months in the making. And okay, so I'll also demo the next feature we have in this release. So that's for access permits. We currently, for many OSM permits, will have a return trip highlighted by the operator in the travel details section. The return trip does need to be plotted, and because the system doesn't provide any features to support that, often cases have been going back from access facilitators requesting the operator provide that return trip. So what we're doing today is we're providing some additional features within the Route Planner to help plan that return trip, and I'll give you a demo of that now.
Oh, you are beautiful, because we had your name a couple of times. I thought you were there.
Okay, so I'm in here as a customer on my new permit application. Depending on the application type, the travel details section will provide you the ability to declare whether there is a return trip required, laden or unladen. If I leave it none at the moment, you'll see I've got a simple, very simple route here, and from waypoint 1 to currently this is declared as a single trip, no return. If I go now and turn this into and declare that it is a return trip, and I go back to my Route Planner, what you'll notice is we've got some new labels added to the waypoints. So the first waypoint will be labelled as a start trip, and as you begin to add more waypoints, you'll see this final destination checkbox underneath the waypoint. What that will allow you to do is declare once you've reached the planning your trip from your base or start location to your destination. You can declare that as the destination, and what will happen then is the system, the Route Planner, will automatically add the return trip location, which will be and will go away and calculate the return trip route based on that. And what will happen is, depending on the route you planned, the return trip may go back down the same way, or in many instances where there may be one-way roads or certain motorways, it'll return you round in the right way, so you'll get both legs of the trip planned out. Now that should help support operators to get that return trip planned out. If I don't provide a return, an error will appear saying that I need to add that final destination before I can complete my payment application. So I'm hoping this functionality, those calls to the access facilitators and that rework that stops the application getting through to road managers be eliminated. We can get that same application out to consent as quickly. Okay, so the next we have also for access is in the renewal side of things. So we have a automated renewal feature in the portal. When a customer goes to renew, the dates that were defaulting for renewal were not supporting the reuse of consents, particularly where road managers have provided the maximum 3 years. So what we've done is we've changed the defaults to help improve the access permit to renewal process and leverage particularly those consents which are for longer periods. So I'll give you a demo of what that actually means now. So I'll jump into a permit here. So from your permit, as a customer, you can go in and trigger a renewal. You can do it from the application tracker as well, but I'll do it from the permit here. Before I can put that, the current permit here is going from the 6th of May through to the 7th of May 2022. Now, if I was to trigger a renewal, now in the system, that renewal will look at those dates and that current period on the permit. And in my travel details section, you'll first notice that the period from will be disabled. So currently that's available and it defaults a number of ways, generally to the current date. By bringing it to the actual period, so this is 1 day after the current permit ends. It means that we're going to lock down that continuity of the permit, and that's important because we want to be able to use the current period. And so for this permit, it was a 12-month permit from 21 to 22 May. Instead of defaulting the period 2 to 3 years, we've defaulted it to the 12 months, which is the current period of the permit. That's important because that current period is usually determined by the road manager that provides the shortest consent period. If all road managers provide maximum 3 years, then the permit will generally be issued for 3 years. But often there'll be a road manager or more that will provide less.
Which card is that
and
for?
what was happening previously is that those that were providing 3 years were getting penalised for that effectively, because we would continually go out for another 3 years, which would exceed the period that they provided. So what we're doing now is we're going to use the current permit period, which will be determined by the road manager as the least consent period provided. So in this case, for a 12-month period, the road manager or road managers who provided that shorter period will be requested consent. Those road managers that have provided up to 3 years, we won't be going back to consent for. So while this will default to lower period on the permit, it will mean that there'll be less consent sent out, which means that that permit will be renewed quicker. And it also supports those road managers who are providing that longer period of time. So hopefully important gain in the renewal automation. In cases where it's just one single road manager that's doing the shortest period, they'll continue to get the consent request, whereas those that haven't won't. So it should be a win both for road managers that are trying to provide as much consent time as possible, as well as for heavy vehicle operators looking to renew their permits.
Thanks, John. We'll now hand over to Nathan to go through the accreditation updates.
Thanks very much, Carly. So the ones we've got coming through is for our list of NHVAS auditors. that previously it was done as all manually done, where they would go through the list, the accreditation team would go through the list, and when it would come up to them to about to expire, they would manually send out a notice to them or an email to them. To help with this, we've put those auditors in the portal, and we've got it now that there's a reminder notification going at least 6 weeks before. So we're proactively getting the auditors to, keep an eye on their insurances and so forth, so they can keep it up to date all the time. So this will be a nice little benefit for the guys upstairs, in that they won't have to manually keep looking at it and adjusting it accordingly. And the next one we've got coming through as well, still with running with auditors, is the once they've expired as well. As I mentioned previously, they would manually go in and send an email out, all set out for the auditors. Now, with the date sitting through, the day after it expires, the overnight job runs out and sends that through, which absolutely reduces the time that they deal with that, and they can focus on other things. Thanks very much. Next we have available is for currently there's just a thing where customers are putting in a rego, not realising that it's a trailer, and if they're in the mass only module, it's allowing them to process the application, which causes refunds because trailers aren't to be in the mass module. To help with this, we've created some validations in the portal now to help mitigate that, and I'll just quickly demo that for you now. So the first one here, as you can see, this customer here just has the mass module by itself. So for this particular one, as they go to add a registration, it'll do a check behind the scenes, realizes that it is a trailer, and warns them straight up in here to say trailers cannot be added to mass, and they then can't even complete it because there's a validation error in there. So they have to then delete their and put the correct one in, which makes things a lot easier and it stops them from getting that through. And then if we have a customer that has both mass and maintenance modules, when they go to add, they just think they go to add one to mass. The same sort of checks are done behind the scenes again. Whoop, might be a moment. Then it'll come up and trailer will be added to maintenance. You have the option to remove it because the customer may still go, oh no, I'm happy for that to be added to our maintenance module. If not, they can remove it and change that through there. So that definitely saves a lot of refunds going out to our customers, and a lot easier for maintaining it through, which is great.
Thanks, Nathan. And we'll now pass over to Steve for our vehicle standards update.
Thanks, Carly. Just a quick update about some small changes that are going in for vehicle standards today. So we're continuing to get feedback from our customers and also via our vehicle standards team about little changes that we could make to make the application forms work a little better. So the ones that are on screen there, changes in the Crane and Dolly applications. So I'll share my screen and show you what those look like. So the first couple of things that we've got in here are that the Crane and Dolly applications, where there's two sections in here for details about each of those components, we have a button here that copies the information from the first section into the second section. What we had before was that the VIN or chassis number would copy from the Crane. We've been informed that that's not always the case and doesn't need to be copied down. So what we've got now is that when that button's ticked, the VIN or chassis number won't copy down. So that gives you the opportunity to be able to enter that in independently of what the VIN or chassis number is for the Crane. Then the next one is around make or model. We've just done a little bit of reordering about putting the mandatory fields first in the Dolly section. So previously the Dolly manufacture date was at the top, but for IPS applications, the manufacture date is in the mandatory field. So based on feedback from the vehicle standards team and customers, we've put that into a more logical order. And the final one is just a small change in the fields here around taking the GCM input field and taking it out of the combination and putting it within the carrier fields. We've been informed that that's the appropriate place for that input to sit. And so, yeah, we're continuing to take that feedback, make small changes for efficiency and for making the application forms more logical so that hopefully they make it a little bit easier to use. Thank you, and I'll pass back to Carly.
Awesome. Thanks heaps, Steve. And so that covers off all of the major items that are in our release. There are, of course, minor bug fixes and other changes, which are all in our release notes, which you'll be able to view online. So our next webinar should be on the 19th of May. And if you require any assistance from us in the interim, our help centre is still in place. If you have access to the new portal where PBS and DAM are located, you'll be able to also access chat assistance to speak directly with our team. Otherwise, customers can contact the call centre. There's a phone number and email there, and road managers also have their own dedicated phone number and email. Thank you very much for joining us.
Joel, and I think you already moved